back.
All we got is time, so stay a while, stay a while. All we got is time, so stay a while, stay a while.
With my most anticipated video, says me, of the home birth questions. This is going to be part 1. I'm only going to answer a few questions because if not, it will be a very, very long video, like an hour long, and I don't want that. I want them to be easy to share, easy to watch for people who really want to know about home birth. So it's just going to be like a little mini series, and that's what I'm gonna do. So today I'm gonna do how to find a midwife and what are the differences and when I wouldn't recommend a home birth. So number 1 is how to find a midwife. For me, I was very blessed, and my midwife was, I believe, sent to me by God, because I wasn't looking for a midwife at the time. I found her card and at my chiropractor's office, really random, because it sounds really random, but she rented one of the offices within the chiropractor office, and I saved it in my car. I was like, oh, midwife, I kind of wanted a home birth, and I kind of put it away in my car and left it there for a couple of months. I was already pregnant at the time. That was like December. Let me see, Jerry was born 17, so December of 2017. No, December of 2016. And then I think it was like February of 2017, the next year, I got to meet the midwife, and my chiropractor was like, oh, if you ever go into labor, here's a midwife, she's here in the office. And that got me thinking about it again. I was like, you know what, I really want a home birth. God just put it in my heart. I felt like it was not a coincidence. It was God speaking to me, because we were so worried about leaving Boogie's at home, because he's never been without us, and we just didn't want to be in a hospital again. I didn't want to have to get induced and all this other stuff. I just didn't want to have a bad experience again. So I opened up my glove compartment, and I ended up finding her card. So I gave her a call, and I was like, hey, do you take this insurance? Can we meet? We had a consultation. She answered any questions we had, and I was like, will you even take me? Because I was 32 weeks pregnant at the time. So I was pretty close to being due. And she was like, yes, of course, you can do the switch. And so the next time I met with my doctor, I was like, well, we're going with a midwife. I've decided to have a home birth. And of course, they were like, we don't recommend that. Not a good idea. If there's an emergency, lots of things go wrong. The placenta gets stuck inside of you sometimes, and all this other stuff. And then all I asked him was, what is your C-section rate? And he was like, well, that goes into, and I was just like, what's your C-section rate? 1, he never really got around to answering the question. And 2, a lot of doctors have high C-section rates because that's what they kind of go to. So if something doesn't feel right to you and you don't want to have a C-section, and it's not really medically necessary where it's an emergency, look at your options, because you don't have to go through with it. I understand that there's some cases that you do, but in many cases you really don't need to. Just because you had a C-section doesn't mean you have to have a C-section again. You can have a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after C-section. So always check out for your options. Thank you, Mama. Anyways, I've gotten a little bit distracted. So anyways, I ended up finding my midwife like that. But if that wasn't the case and I needed to find a midwife, it's okay, baby. I just would pray, call my insurance to see if, I would call them to see if they cover home birth, how much do they cover, and if they have anybody in network, or even if they do a birth center, if you wanted to do a birth center. And get a camisa first. The second thing I would do is find local groups on Facebook. And or just a home birth group and ask if anybody's in your area and if they have anybody you'd recommend. There's a few on Facebook. I know I'm in like a home birth group on there. Maybe a couple, honestly. I don't know, because since I didn't really have questions after the first time. But yeah, so difference between home versus hospital birth. With my home birth, I had a ton of freedom. I got to eat while I was in labor if I could, which I did like in the beginning of the beginning stages. I got to move around freely. I got to pick positions that were fine for me. I got to choose if I wanted to get checked or not. They didn't just automatically break my water just because I was contracting or not, like anything. And all of my home births, my water broke on their own right before baby was born, minus Judah, which if you saw my birth story, you would know what happened with his thing. It didn't break. But it wasn't a huge deal. Like, we weren't really concerned about it. Also, if you want to watch that video, I will have it down in the description. And if you want a more detailed one, let me know, because then I can do that too. Thank you, Mama. And I get to pick how many people I want in my room. If I don't want anybody in my room, if I only want my husband in my room, or if I only want my mom and my husband in my room, if I want everybody in my room or my house, it's up to me, because this is my house and I get to choose. If I don't want somebody in my room, my midwife helps me and closes the door on them. But no, this is not pants, Mama. But so you get a lot more freedom. You feel a lot more comfortable. You're in whatever you choose to wear that's comfy. You can pick whatever positions you choose that feel good for you. It's just an overall better experience. With my hospital birth, I was induced. I was pushed to try to have a C-section. I was pushed to like, oh, do you want epidural? Do you want epidural? Do you want epidural? And it's like, if I already said no, like, can you just stop asking? That's what drives me crazy, is they don't, not everybody and not every time, but my experience, they didn't listen to what I wanted. And it was just crazy. I wasn't risky or anything. I wasn't even past due. I didn't even need to be induced. So it was just a crazy experience. Mama, I'm doing a video. Can you please wait? Those are the main differences between hospital birth and home birth. But next is a time I wouldn't recommend a home birth. And honestly, there's not really a time I wouldn't recommend a home birth, because since you're more calm and you're more in your element, like your own space, there's less potential to go wrong. And in my opinion. Mamacita. And especially if you find yourself an experienced midwife that knows what they're doing, they're accredited, then they know what's going on and when it becomes an emergency or not. So my midwife did a risk analysis, like made sure I was kind of close to a hospital, like what was my previous births like, and stuff like that. And we kind of go from there. And if I was high risk, then I could see a high risk doctor and her at the same time. And like, that's how it goes. Now in the state of Florida, you can't have a breech home birth knowingly, and you can't have a multiple birth at home knowingly. So they would have to be unknown, which I've seen happen. And so those are not necessarily times I wouldn't recommend, but in the state of Florida, you're not legally allowed to have those with a midwife, which stinks, because if I had twins, I would definitely want to still have them at home. You can definitely have your twins naturally, though. That doesn't automatically mean that you have to have a C-section, just so you know. A lot of doctors will try to push you to have a C-section just because you're having twins. If everything's healthy, if everything's fine, if babies are fine, don't let them pressure you to have a C-section. One, earlier than necessary, and two, just because you're having twins. If you want to go for a natural twin birth, like, go for it. Find a doctor who's going to support you in that. Find a doula who will help you during birth to help speak your wishes. Have support. That's what you really need, is to have support on what you want, and people who are going to help you fight for what you want. that's like that's like the number one advice I have. If there's a like, you can't have a home birth. And there's always a birth center if you don't want to have it at home but don't want to have a hospital birth. There's always a birth center, which is kind of like in the middle of both, a feeling of security, because in the way I help myself not fear anything is no matter if you're in the hospital, no matter if you're in the birth center, no matter if you're at home, no matter if you're on the way to the hospital, something can go wrong. And it's not just like, oh, you're at home, that means you have more of a chance for things to go wrong. No, it's not like that. If anything, you have more of a chance for things to go wrong at the hospital because you're getting like checked all this time. You're getting pressured to do things. They're trying to, rush things. And there's a lot of intervention. Whereas in your home birth, and depending on the birth center, because I'm going to assume because I've never had a birth center birth, but there's less intervention and it's more of what you want. So those are some things to remember. But I am going to stop it there, and we'll go into the next questions in the next video. They're getting loud out there. I can hear the baby start to wake up, and she keeps touching and drawing on herself. So I hope you enjoyed part 1. Look forward to part 2. And I will catch you later. Say, don't forget, Jesus loves you. Bye. Can you say bye?